Well, we still got a minute to go.
There was not going to be.
Oh,
Right.
Mr. Shanino's here.
So they're eliminating the aprons off of Spruce.
All right,
So the only way you can get in is on Lynn.
is this on?
Lynn Lane. Yeah.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, and with Ms. Michael absent tonight, I will call the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting to order. We have a single item on the agenda, contract with Motorola Solutions. I'm not sure what this is. Hopefully, Chief, do you have any idea what this is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, can you,
Yeah,
oh, can you speak to it then?
sure. So the radios that we have now in dispatch are end of life. And they've been end of life, and it was, Motorola had come in during the pandemic, or right after the pandemic, when everybody got the funding, and advised us that our radios were end of life. And so that kind of put us in a predicament of what we were gonna do, and the goal was to try to wait to see if we could put the new radios into the new building instead of trying to move old, new old radios into a new building. But I don't know when that's gonna happen, so we decided that we needed to get the radios, because if they break, the radios, there aren't the parts to repair them now. So we're taking a risk every time, every day that we're not getting new radios. If something happens, we may not be able to get them fixed. So Kent, Streetsboro and Kent State, they all purchased their new radios this past year. And, we kind of put it off for a little bit, but it's getting to we budgeted for it. So at the beginning of the year, we budgeted in two funds. Brian can help me out with that, but they're $150,000 in each of the different line items. It's, we originally were built, or the quote was for $300,000. The quote came in I think came in at $270,000, but there is a 5-year contract or a warranty that we need to pay for. So it's gonna end up costing us over $300,000. But we have the money already set aside in the budget, so we're gonna encumber that money. We ordered the radios, we're gonna encumber for next year, and then when the bill comes in, we're gonna pay that, and then also the yearly maintenance fees over 5 years.
We're paying for everything up front, though?
We're gonna pay for the radios up front, so probably the first year of service, that's $300,000, which we had budgeted anyway. And then after the next 4 years, we'll just budget that for the next year.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, I'd just like to know what the average lifespan of those pieces are, or is there any?
I don't know, I mean, you would hope it's a long time, but just like technology, any technology, it's hard to say, so I cannot give you an educated answer.
Okay, well, at least that part helps.
Yeah.
But you said there's a 5-year warranty, right?
Yes, yep, that's what we're paying for.
So
that year.
5 years at minimum, I guess?
Yeah, after the 5 years, it's like breaks.
So here's the thing with that, so remember a couple years ago, we put in for the grant from the Turnpike to get those 80 radios? Those were end-of-life radios, and we use those, we're still using some of those. So when they say end-of-life, it doesn't mean they just suddenly stop working, but we run into the problem that they're not gonna be able to service them with parts. So at some point down the road, it's probably gonna be longer, I don't wanna project, but, or guess too far, but 10, 15 years, that, technology changes and those may be outdated radios in 10 or 15 years. But if we're gonna stay in the dispatch business, we need to have those.
Any other questions? You okay moving this forward,
Yeah,
Matt?
it's life-saving equipment, we need it.
Okay, then we will move that forward. Is there a management update, Mayor? No management update. Then I will adjourn the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting and call to order the Planning Committee meeting. We have about 5 items on the agenda. The first one is downtown signage, and this was something we brought up last month. So Not exactly sure where we're headed with this. I did find my old handout that had some of the options for the signage, but I guess the questions are, what is the process? Do we have money budgeted? How do we want to move forward?
And that was my main question. I think it'll tie into possibly the ARPA funds, if that's something we might be able to use. So maybe that's a conversation that we should have first. But what we did before, and I don't recall when we actually had the second conversation, because in 2021 we had the initial, and that was with the landscape plan that Main Street was bringing to us. The same time we had these wayfinding signs, and at the time it was we were told that there should be a policy in place for signage in the downtown area. That was an opinion that was expressed. And then you fast forward to, I think it was Streets and Sidewalks on Mr. Harper's committee, that we had the second conversation about it. And I don't recall, we'd have to look at the minutes on what stalled that out. But now with this, and Rob, what's in front of you, and we can send it around the council, is when we had the conversation with Streets and Sidewalks, just to kind of put a bow on it, there was one design that I brought and printed out for everybody. So I'd like to just bring that back. And if it lives here for now, we talk about it next month, at least it's a jumping off point. But one design that we can move forward with, and the question now is, do we or don't we need a policy around signage? And Bob, I'm kind of looking at you, if you feel there needs to be a policy with what the signage looks like, but if we can all kind of rally around that one design, then we know what they're going to look like, and then we can decide what signs need to go up in terms of wayfinding. Should it be the parking, pointing to courthouse, city hall, those types of things. So first thing right now is just to get it on the agenda for discussion. And Rob, I know you're holding I think it's the one from Streets and Sidewalks we printed a while ago, so we can send that around again.
If city council approves the signage and the city is paying for the signage, we don't need a policy.
Okay.
It's what had been thrown at us in the past was 4 or 5 different agencies, organizations wanting signage. And the concern I have always had, and it was my understanding when the streetscape program was approved, city council then said they didn't want those types of signs downtown. I wasn't around here in 1992 or 3, so I don't know what they look like, but again, we had multiple organizations that wanted to throw their signs up, and we have too small of a downtown with too many trees to make a difference.
Right.
So that's why we didn't approve their signs, but Design Review had approved some signs themselves that didn't move forward, kind of on that same
vein.
premise. So, if this is what city council wants, and if the city is paying for it, we can install it.
Okay, so if what you're asking for, what would need to happen is an approval by city council to approve that design?
And location, installation locations and
Okay.
stuff, sure.
And I thought at one point the funds were an issue too. When this came up, the city wasn't, flush with money.
Right.
So that certainly needs to be a question.
We haven't spent any of the money that was donated, and signage was part of that donation.
Is that the Jack Schaefer?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I didn't know there was money for that.
I believe it was $4,500, and I think it might have been for some specific signs. I'll have to revisit that, but I think it was a set amount, and there were certain signs that were requested.
Yeah.
And it may have been about the history and the life of Jack.
Okay.
I'll have to revisit that, so those funds that aren't spent through that Schaefer Foundation, I don't know if that will cover the cost of the signs that we're thinking as far as wayfinding and parking, whatever it may be. So I don't know if those funds will cover that cost.
We'll have to chase down the
Yeah.
intent with that, because there was $100,000, and I don't know that we spent any. But it went to more than just signs.
Right, yeah, I think the sign portion was about 4,500. If I remember right. We'll revisit
I couldn't
that.
say that. I'll have to find it, look it up.
So I think a couple of things. One is, I mean, we don't have the other versions, because if you recall that the Kent State, I'm forgetting the unit there, but a bunch of students in groups had presentations to the Main Street group about different styles. That is one of the ones I think that made it to the final stages, but I don't know if we ever voted to approve a specific style.
There's
We have a
four.
question or a comment.
I just wanted to bring one to council. The
Yeah.
key concept, do we want the signs and the approval to go with it? Then we can get into the weeds on design.
But I think we need to approve the style or whatever, because I think that's kind of the heart of this. We need to make sure we have enough money, and then we just have to go and just do it. And then the question is, does this apply to other places? Now, the Design Review Commission will approve or disapprove signs on buildings, but these are like freestanding signs or hanging from a pole.
Right,
I
these
thought
would
I saw, Cliff, did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
The city of Ravenna can place signs as they see fit, as they need,
Right.
as they want to.
So it doesn't, so the design review
It's on.
doesn't need to review these?
Correct,
Okay.
because they're
Okay.
city signs.
And I thought, maybe I was wrong, my memory's not as good. I thought there was $150,000 for the cemetery and $150,000 for the city and also the township for signage or things that were improvement. Maybe I'm wrong on
I
that?
think your figures are
Off.
off, yeah. I think they both got 100,000, and the cemetery spent the bulk of theirs on getting expertise.
Back. And it's not done yet.
And it's not done yet.
Okay.
With that, but they've used a good portion of their funds. To my knowledge, we haven't spent any.
And the other, Mark was brought up ARPA.
We have 60-something thousand in there.
Aren't we going to be short on the water tower money? Wouldn't ARPA funds be better for the water tower? That's just my thought. I mean, so that could go there too, right? And that's up to council to decide whether we would put it towards signs or towards a water tower that everybody could.
Well, it's not my place to speak, but there's close to $500,000 left in the ARPA funds. So signage isn't gonna cost anywhere near that.
Okay. I didn't know what kind of money was in there, so, but we will be short somewhat on
And we'll probably
the
be
water tower.
currently
right?
about $500,000 short in water. We're thinking it's 3.8 million. We've got 3.2 set aside.
I remember, you got a grant for part of it.
We've got
right?
several.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, very good. Good work, thanks.
So do we want to just leave this here for next month? Is
Yeah,
there something to
would-
move forward yet?
I think
No,
we
I
can
think
check out some of the statistics in the meantime, and looking at the sheets here with Brian, it shows a reserve of $60,000. So we apparently spent some of that money.
Jack Schaefer.
So we'll have to try and chase that down and see what it was spent on.
All right, well, let's put it on the agenda for next month and be committed to moving this finally forward. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, it says Chapter 214, and this is all about purchasing. I can't remember the context where this came up, but we were talking about purchasing something at the time, and maybe it was a discussion about whether council could approve in the budget contracts. You remember that discussion? Like if we approved along with the budget, the capability of incorporating contracts in the budget so they didn't have to come back to council separately. I think that's when I was doing some looking over our code and found Chapter 214, which is not worded well, in my opinion, because I'm confused. I don't know what it's actually saying. It could be interpreted one or two ways. It's a very short one-sentence ordinance. But anyway, what it effectively does is limit, or whenever there's a purchase of $2,000 or more, and the wording is through the state purchasing program, Now, the question is it when we buy something for $2,000 more? But that doesn't make any sense, because it's for state purchasing, why would you need to get quotes or bids? Or is it just something that's assigned at $2,000 by the state purchasing, but we're not going through state purchasing? So if you understood anything I just said, you have a better understanding of this than I do, because I'm just kind of winging it. But I guess the essence of the discussion is, does every contract for a purchase have to come through city council? And I think that may be the first question we ask ourselves. Are we comfortable, at city council, allowing contracts to be initiated and signed without council approval? Is that any? And now, obviously, if it's above or a certain amount, we certainly want to have that discussion, but is there anybody on council that thinks every purchase, regardless of size or what the contract is for, needs to come to council? Is anybody of that opinion?
I just feel like it's a checks and balances. And it doesn't hurt at least to be aware of it. I don't know that we'd necessarily have to approve, but at least be aware.
Yeah. And I think, Brian, you said something that, I can't remember whether it was Kent or someplace else, that has a sort of a plan of action that certain contracts do not come before city council. I thought I saw an email from you.
Well, I mean, we've seen a couple, like, I know Chelsea was looking at them too, like, where, like 20, like, I was actually emailing back and forth with Aurora today, their finance director. They take anything at $20,000.
Okay.
And state purchasing price or not, whatever, it just goes to council for all that. Now, I'm not clear if they have a ordinance for every single one of them, or how they approve them. They might do it by motion. I didn't get that far into the discussion. But basically, anything at $20,000, even if it's state purchasing, it goes to council for approval. They have their department heads really conditioned to be aware of that, and they know that they can't do anything until that gets to that point. And I think even his purchase orders, they put a flag in the system, like he knows, the finance director himself will actually look at it and say, okay, this was approved by council, this wasn't, so I'm gonna reject those. So that's kind of, I've seen that in a couple of different places. They'll use 20. 25 has been kind of a common number to use as well. Anything below that, the mayor or the administration, however you want to do it, has their own procedures and policies for approval. Like, for instance, here, the department head initiates a purchase order. It goes either to the mayor or to Kay for approval, and then it comes to me. But when it comes to me, I'm not really approving it per se, other than I'm looking to make sure the funds are available in the budget. Right. So that's our process here. But we don't have an add-on for council. I mean, we're not real clear with what this, I agree, this 214, I can't make heads or tails of what it's saying.
Yeah, and I'm not sure why it was initiated.
And it doesn't even really say is it everything over 2,000? I don't even know, I'm not sure.
I don't know, that's the question.
Yeah, it's a great question, but.
So if city council is approving our yearly budget, and I have, for instance, budgeted $20,000, that's $30,000 for batteries for traffic signals, do you need to see that? Because you've already approved that budget, and there's a specific line item for traffic signals or traffic signal maintenance or something like that. Because you'll literally be
The
inundated
conventional
with these
thinking has been, it seems like just about every measure, every style of contract, whether the money's been allocated or not. Like, money was allocated, I think it came up when we were talking about an ambulance. And money was allocated for it. So why did the contract have to come before city council? And I think we've had the opinion that everything has to come.
So you're using the word contract, not
Right.
purchase.
Yeah.
So there's a difference. If I hire Signal Service to replace some parts for me, I don't have a contract with them. They're providing a service. But if I'm gonna hire a landscape architect to design something, the mayor has to enter a contract. Yes, council will sign that, or will issue either a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a contract.
Yeah, it's true, it's two different.
They're two different things.
Yeah,
Discuss it.
apples and oranges there.
Exactly.
The truth is, a purchase could be a contract. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. You could argue a purchase is a form of a contract. I mean, but I guess the point is, what do we want to do for the future? I don't know that just because, and this is how we got into that discussion about the budget, I don't know that just because money has been allocated, that alone means it doesn't have to come before council. And I would argue, look, I think there are reasons for stuff like that. I mean, you may, want to go to your uncle to buy those batteries, and maybe they're not the, the best quality or the best price, I don't, but, so I mean, I think there is some oversight in the process, but the question is, what is the level of oversight? When I did a little research, and it's kind of hard to nail this stuff down, I did find it's not in Ohio. There was a city in Washington that actually has this table. It has a contract type, the maximum amount, and then it says whether the mayor or city administrator can sign off on it, or even there's a column for department director. And so there, depending upon the type of contract. Now, I don't know we want to do that. Do we want to take a simpler approach and just put a limit, a threshold, and says if it's above this, it comes to council, everything else, as long as it's budgeted, can be authorized by the mayor or whatever?
And is it per purchase, or is it for the contract for the whole year too? That's the whole other thing, like, you can enter a contract for pieces and parts for something, and it may total $25,000 for the year, but maybe each time you spend like, $1,000 here, $1,000 here, so.
Yeah. It does get confusing. I thought it was interesting that this city had this approach, and it was very detailed. I mean, it's not that, it's probably got about maybe 15 different line items and different types of contracts. But it said to me that they had gone through a similar process and decided at what level certain people other than city council could approve things, and then just a blanket statement, anything not in this table had to be approved by city council. I know Mr. Semino's here, and he weighed in via email. Do you want to bring up your thoughts about what city council has required to do at this point, and what are we able to do in the future if you want to change it? Yeah, it's on.
I think there are several provisions that apply. I mean, one is in the charter, it says the mayor is supposed to sign every contract, right? There's a way that ordinances can be drafted that say, for this particular contract, we're authorizing so-and-so to sign it, the department head or whoever it may be. But, that's a charter, and it says the mayor signs contracts. This section 214, in my opinion, deals solely with the state purchasing contracts, okay? And that's provisions in the state code that says that the state has determined that these providers, these suppliers, do not need to go through bidding, all right, public bidding. These are individuals that we are indicating to you, you can purchase directly from without having competitive bidding, regardless of the size of the contract. So what that ordinance, as far as I'm concerned, section says, is that if it is a state bidding program, where you're not bidding, but state purchase program, where you are buying such supply from one of the people that they have listed in that program, you don't have to do public bidding and ask for 3 separate contracts.
So,
And I think,
can I ask a question on that? Because I'm trying to understand this too, because it says, and I get that, so if we're using state purchasing, it doesn't matter where I go to buy the ambulance, whether I buy it from this company,
No,
this company, or
it
this
has to be
company.
on the list.
On the list, correct. But this is saying, so why, if we'll use police cars, because that's where my brain goes. Sarshone, Ganley, whatever, they can sell me the police cars. They have to sell me at the state rate, correct? So why would I need 3 alternative price quotes? Because that's what this says.
My interpretation of that is that back in 1992, when they brought this thing into existence, back then it was like $25,000 was the minimum. Anything above that needed to go through advertising, public bidding,
Sure.
and then however it worked out, And, subsequently it went up to 50,000. Then it went up, now it's up to 75,000. But I think what happened was when you were doing that, you were thinking about getting at least 3 alternate bids, and those 3 alternate bids under the basic general code, not the purchasing price, but when you're going out for public bidding over a certain price, you need to get those bids. And I think what happened was, when they developed this state purchasing program, they just decided they're going to throw that in as an additional requirement. They didn't have to do that, but it's in the ordinance. It specifically says that can be waived by council, So it's really not kind of a mandatory thing. But my impression is, when that was drafted back in '92, they were just thinking, well, gee whiz, every time we go out and something's over 25,000, we have to go out and public bids and we have to get 3 alternatives. Well, let's put that in there too. That's my impression of how that may have happened. It's kind of like, that was the process that was being done, and they just tacked it on to the state purchasing program. So, and I guess, to me, that's backed up by the fact that the ordinance, the section itself says, well, you council can waive that if you want. So to me, it was just something tacked on, and it didn't necessarily have any great meaning.
Yeah, and I guess the way I look at it is, why have that statement about having 3 alternative price codes for state
Well,
purchasing?
that's why, when I introduced this, I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was, if you're not going to the state purchasing program, and but it's, the item you want to buy is listed there as $2,000 or more,
Then you have to.
provide,
Okay.
what is it, 3 alternative quotes or bids if it's over the threshold for
It's just the
50,000.
wordage.
Well,
Right, with the wording "through the state purchasing program" is confusing, because is it a purchase through, or is it priced through? Does that make sense? Am I finally?
Yeah.
I think it's priced through, because why would you have alternative bids on a state man, it would be one thing.
Because,
We may be getting off of where
We
want
are,
to be on
we're going into
contracts.
semantics.
Sorry, I was
So
trying to understand.
as I'm looking at this, I believe when it went into effect all those many years ago, they were looking at, okay, I'm gonna buy something through the state pricing that costs $5,000, okay? Let's get some bids to make sure that that's the best
That-
price that
Okay,
there
you
is.
just provided a third interpretation
That's
of
And it's
my
not always the
interpretation
best.
Wording of it.
in my opinion.
Yeah, that could,
I
you
think
could
it
be
was,
right.
Surplusage, all right? I just think it was surplusage, they put it in. There was no reason for that. As long as you're within the state bidding program, you can buy from whomever is listed on that
Yeah,
program.
but look at the title of it.
There's no need. Well, there's
Doesn't
just
say
no
anything about
need
state
for that.
purchasing.
Yeah, no, I saw that too, it's weird.
My
I
experience,
think you're trying to make this too complicated, in my opinion.
Well, I think we have a problem with our code as we've unraveled it throughout the years, and I think this is one that just needs to be either repealed or changed or something. But it kind of opens our eyes to the bigger issue, which we were talking
Well,
about
I'll-
earlier.
Here's my position, right? Mayor's signs contract, you can waive that obligation. 2, you've got this 214. All it simply says is, you can buy whatever you want to buy. In fact, if this says, for some reason, if it's over 2,000, you have to get 3 separate suppliers in the state program and compare those as to where you want to go and make a decision from that. I don't think that's necessary, but it's the way it reads. It says it can be waived, and I just think that that's, in my opinion, kind of surplus. So to the extent that you're buying something from the state purchasing program, you go ahead and make your decision you go for. The next thing is separate from that. Now we're talking about contracts outside of state purchasing. And if you're talking about contracts outside of state purchasing, right now, the level is 75,000. To the extent it's over
They increased it? Oh, I didn't know
To the
that.
extent it's now 75,000 or more, you do need to advertise. You do need to get the competitive bids, all right, in order for it to do that. And then you go ahead and purchase whatever it is. Now, if it's under state, under 75,000, and it's not in the state purchasing program, you still go off and you can enter into contracts with individuals. There's no requirement that you get 3 separate bids, but anything under $75,000 that's not in the state purchasing program, you have the ability certainly to go off and get, because everything's not in the state purchasing program. So there's the ability, the flexibility to go off and enter into contracts with entities that are not in there, but yet the price that you're gonna pay is under 75,000, all right? And you certainly can say, well, gee whiz, I'm not gonna spend $60,000 without getting 3 comparables, just so I feel like I'm comfortable. You can do that, you can still do it, but there's no obligation, all right? So I think there's 2 different ways of contracting. One in the state program, one simply outside of the state program, pursuant to the state statute for entering into contracts. And I think that what I've seen, I've talked with the mayor, I've talked with Chelsea, Tammy, from the finance council to get a contract, or we do not have to go to council to get a contract. So I think that there's been comparable situations. I mean, you mentioned Aurora. If it's under 20,000 or less, they don't have to go back to council for a contract, assuming that it's been allocated in the budget. There's a line item for that particular project or that particular item. It's repairing traffic lights or whatever it is. And if it's under the 20,000 in Aurora, and they can go to 50. When I talked to Chelsea, she said she saw a community that said 50,000 could be an amount that they could not come back to council. I think it's entirely in your prerogative, right? You make a provision that deals with how you feel comfortable, and, you know, I know you have a concern about, you know, I want to see everything that happens. Well, another alternative that, you know, came out of what Chelsea was doing was monthly, council gets a report of what contracts have been entered into. And obviously, if it's already, the work has been done, and the contract's been entered into, I mean, there's not too much you're gonna be able to do. But to the extent that it's something that's upcoming and you wanna take a look at, or they go, gee, let's pull this one back in a second, whatever you want. I mean, you know, I think that's discretionary. So you can go from a position where you say, I wanna see every contract and have it passed by ordinance, which can be cumbersome. Or you can say that we're gonna have a budget, we're gonna allocate funds within the department, and these are the line items that we're allocating monies for, and assuming that it's not in state purchasing, assuming it's outside of state purchasing, that person, that department head, has the ability to enter into a contract up to $20,000 for that line item. And they have the right to go ahead and agree with it, have the mayor sign the contract, whatever, and move forward with the project. At the end of the month, when you get to the next council meeting, another provision can be that we want to see a list of what contracts have been entered into, so that at least there is some oversight in that fashion. But it allows you to be able to not have everyone asking, well, do I need an ordinance for this? Do I need an ordinance for that? I mean, you set a policy. That's all it is. You set a policy that you feel comfortable with, and you move forward. And that's pretty much it.
In March of this year, Chelsea sent out a request to the other clerks in our region asking that question. And I know Kent, you know, what we got back from them was every single contract goes to council for approval. Independents, I was looking at it now, anything over $15,000. Other places, to your point, say there's the mayor approval rate, whatever that is. So it could be $15,000, $20,000, whatever's in their charter or in their policy. That then goes to council. And then North Canton, Brian, I know we spoke about something similar, is that they aggregate all of those contracts. And then it's a one-off approval. So you don't have, Bob doesn't have to come with his individual batteries that he needs approved. But it could be aggregated into a larger one ordinance approval for all of these contracts. I don't know if that's the route we really want to go, but just as an example, to your point, creating a policy and everybody does it a little bit different, the options are there. So if we want, I don't know if everybody on council got these responses, but there's quite a few options on the table that we have to choose from.
Well, I think it's a matter of what your comfort level is, all right? What do you feel comfortable? How do you feel comfortable moving forward? I would say this view, that I think within the Department of Finance, the issues raising is, you need a contract for this, you need an ordinance for this, you need an ordinance for that. I mean, there should be some way of just setting out a policy that says, this is it. If you're under this, possibly, if you choose to do it. If you're under this amount, it's not a matter of requiring an ordinance. You go forward as long as we budgeted it, and then in that line item, authorizes funds to be spent in that manner, they have the ability to move forward. You know, to the extent that, you know, there's some accounting at the beginning of each council meeting that says these are the contracts we enter into, that's fine too. You know, I think it's an individualistic situation, and, you know, it's a matter of just discussing it, coming up with what you feel at ease. And obviously, it's something that could be changed over time. I mean, if there's a sense that it's not right, or we feel as though we want to do something differently, obviously, it's just an ordinance that sets forth the policy that gets amended. Right?
Okay, so I think what we need to decide is like I said before, the first question I think council needs to answer is, do we want to make a change in the sense that we feel comfortable as a council not having every contract come before us? And then if we get past that question, then what do we want to do? Do you want to set a simple threshold? And you've already mentioned a couple of cities that do that. Or, I mean, do we want to go to the extent that, like I said, this other city did, where they had a table that said, here's the type of contract, here's who can approve it, here's the amount. That's sort of like, you know, the second approach with a threshold, but more detail. I don't know. I mean, I think the problem with that is there's all kinds of contracts. I think we'd be making changes to that on a regular basis, right?
And I believe that the idea of state purchase would have really no bearing on it.
Well,
in the least.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how the state purchasing program works. Does that require a legislative approval, or?
No, I mean, as far as the Ohio Revised Code goes, if you use the state purchasing, it's not, even if it's over the limits, you're not required to get it, any separate bids or any separate approvals.
Right,
exactly.
Unless, council designates something otherwise, but I'm saying as far as the Revised Code goes. The Revised Code, we just have to bring the stuff like he's talking about, like, that requires a competitive bid.
Well,
So,
yeah, okay, if it's
Yeah.
75, it used to be $50,000.
right.
But I guess the question is, at what level of expenditure does council feel comfortable not having to approve a contract, regardless, to be honest with you, whether it's through the state purchasing program?
And I would lean on Brian, but based on the other, cities that are here, it's either $15,000 or $20,000 that I think, anything below that. But if there's another number that, based on what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the ones I saw, like today was 20,000, I saw 25,000. But I guess it's hard, is it every check that's over that amount? Is it every purchase order that's over that amount? Every cumulative contract for the whole year for that's gonna be that amount? Because, I mean, we enter in blanket POs all the time that are very large at the beginning of the year, electric bills and Dominion Gas and
Yeah,
Quality IP. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that we do at the beginning of the year, and we set aside that money.
Yeah, but we approve, like for Quality IP, we approve a contract. Now, if they want to charge us more than that's in the contract for some other service, they always have to come. And that may be a good example, for example. Let's say we have Quality IP, was it, I don't know, 100 and something, 30,000, I don't know.
11,000
Okay.
a month.
And then all of a sudden, we're getting all these text messages, and we say, well, Quality IP has this other protective program we can plug into our email system or text, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's going to be, $100 a month more. Is that something that has to come before council? I mean, that's the kind of question we're talking about here. And then I think procedurally, there might be some other alternatives. One could be that any contract not having approval or needing approval from city council could be bundled into a report like we get every month from all those other entities in the city, so that we can look at them and see what was done. Or we could say, hey, you have to send it to us before you actually enter the contract, and then we can look through it, and unless somebody objects, you can go ahead. I don't know, I think there are other procedural controls we could put in place.
I mean, I could run a list of checks after we do them every month and then include them, like I started giving.
How many checks are you talking about?
Well, it won't be all the checks, it'll just be like a check register. So you know how I give you that 2-page deal now, I started adding that to the report where you have the fund balances, and I can give you a check register, it might be 5-6 pages long, and you guys could look at all the checks that were paid that month, I've seen some of the smaller villages and townships do that. I haven't seen it at the city level too much, but
Probably because they don't have
people
as
do it.
many.
Well, I think you probably do that even on the cemetery board, don't they do something like that? They give you a list of the checks, and so you can see what was paid. You guys have seen that.
Yes.
Mr.
And that-
Chairman,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I guess what I would suggest is, Brian has and Tammy has all kinds of different requests that they get, or issues that arise regarding, do I need to do this by ordinance, do I need to do that by ordinance? To me, I think it might be beneficial for them perhaps to compile a list of the different things they're concerned with as far as what do we need to do, how do we go about doing it, and what's the proper procedure. If he would, or Tammy would provide you with a list of the different, not just contracts, but other things he's talking about, that might come up with necessities or reasons to get justification for the payment. I think if you had a better idea of those kinds of things that they're worried about, it might be helpful to you as far as developing a policy as to what you want to address. So, because I'm sure he could sit there and start thinking about all kinds of things that he's concerned with, as far as, and Tammy too, as far as, what do I do? Or I'm frozen because I don't know what to do, all right? So, just a request.
Okay, yeah. So maybe, all right, so like the previous item, maybe we put this on the agenda for next, this is like not an emergency situation I'm aware of. And in the meantime, if you can, and maybe also Chelsea, because she had mentioned, I think, that there are department heads who have the same questions. So maybe send out an email to the department heads, and you and Tammy can get together and kind of put a list of the types of contracts they have concerns about, types of purchases they have concerns about, with the central question, do we need or should we need city council approval? And then, I'll do some brainstorming about the process part, chapter 214, whether we get rid of it, change it, or whatever. And then see, maybe a month from now, we can kind of be more focused on what we want to do. That make sense? You good with that, Tim? Okay, then let's move on. The next item is the Quadratech Care Energize the Environment Grant Program. Oh,
I'm going to ask it.
okay, thanks, Mr. Semino. So this is a grant, let me pull up the tracking sheet that Judy Watkins has, wants to apply for. The basic purpose would be to help build the trails at our new Emerald Lake Preservation Park. The one-time grant would be an award of $3,500, and there's no matching funds. I don't have a whole lot of other details other than that. Does anybody have any questions? All right, so we can move this on. All right, we will move this on for a vote at the Committee of the Whole. All right, so the next item is spending ARPA funds, and we've kind of alluded to this. The American Rescue Program, I don't know what the P stands for. Funds, these were funds that the federal government authorized to send to municipalities across the country in response to the COVID pandemic. I believe we received 1.3 something million total, or seems, that number seems to be in my head. But anyway, and then a good portion of it has been allocated already to the water tower project, and supposedly there's about $500,000 left over. So I guess the question becomes, well, what do we want to spend the money? There was some concern at one time, and there have been some reports of, especially the current federal government, wanting to pull back some of that money. From my understanding, it's money that hadn't been allocated, and we've already received ours, so I'd be surprised if the federal government came in and demanded a refund.
Unless something weird happens, but yes.
But you never know, in this day and age, it's really probably a good idea for us to spend this money.
Regardless, it has to get spent, it has to be at least encumbered by the end of next year.
Right,
regardless,
2024.
Or we have to return.
Right, that is in the federal law. Paul?
I was going to make a comment just similar to what Brian said.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine, we were thinking on the exact same frequency.
Any other, so I guess, and I know you had some ideas, right?
Well, my main question was just making sure that it's been allocated for the end of the year. And I know encumbered next year, but you're saying
It has to
Do
be,
we-
it has to be encumbered next year.
We have to have a plan to pay, I mean, not just, and it has to be something probably in the form of an ordinance or something.
It's so mixed how everybody does it, but yes, I mean, there's not a lot of restrictions on the way the final rule came out. When they originally did it, it had to be on water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. They've made it wide open since then. If you have less than 10 million, which we have less than 10 million.
Yeah.
So it can be basically used on what they call loss revenue replacement, which basically means it can be used for anything. It can be used as.
Yeah, I don't think there's when they put this plan in place, I don't think they had real good, and obviously people have concerns about that, especially in the private sector, of checking up on how people actually spent their money.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's a big concern, but.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, it's the American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay, it was planned.
Yeah. Part of the permissible uses for it, as you say, are, to recover some of these places where we've lost money. And I believe one of the permissible uses is to rebuild reserves to enhance financial stability. So it could go into just our general fund, couldn't it?
It could.
Meeting that provision.
Or we could even kind of split it up between some of the funds, like you could include parks and that, and maybe, the street fund and stuff,
And I only bring that up to say that there are
Right.
many permissible uses for the funds at this time.
I would like to see at least a portion of it maybe set into a fund for the future build of our future municipal buildings. I think it would be a great starter for that, and that is something that would benefit the entire city.
If we could encumber it by next year, we could do that, sure. We'd have to make sure it was at least encumbered by next year.
I can spend it.
No doubt.
Well, I guess though, and a few months ago, I was approached, and I forget the guy's name, from some outside organization, the Ravenna plan. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember you talking about that.
Yeah, I forget the gentleman's name. And he had some ideas. I guess when I think about this money, it's money the federal government gave us. Could be spent on a lot of things. I thought maybe some homeless related, helping with the homeless could be a good, because I think a lot of homelessness has resulted since the pandemic, not that we didn't have a problem beforehand. But there are other ideas out there too. Socking it away or putting it to the use for a
I
new
just
city
brought that
facility.
up to say
Yeah,
that
no,
that's
I
one
get
of the
it.
reasons.
Absolutely.
I could think of several things that we might want to spend it on right now.
Yeah, I know
I think there's more ideas on how to spend it than there is money available,
Yeah,
so.
absolutely, that's true, yeah.
Especially that water.
David Hartley of the United Fund is the one we were talking about before.
Okay,
That's the one that you mentioned.
right.
I know that water tower will be coming into its project, won't be that far down the road.
I mean, well, yeah, we could simply allocate the remainder towards the water project.
We could.
Can we get an update on what the scope of the water tower is and what the allocated funds are to it? And then, Brian, I think this was just kind of, for me, was more of a check-the-box item for ARPA, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it, a recent update, so I wanted to make sure that the funds were at least allocated
Right.
for the end of the year. And then there's also a chance, correct me if I'm wrong, though, that we can reallocate those funds after the fact. If for example, the water tower ends up with more money, could you reallocate those ARPA funds to another project?
As far as ARPA goes, yes. And I just want to make sure it wouldn't affect that grant that you got, though, because
Right.
you did dedicate that we would use that. So that, I would have to make sure on his grant that he applied for, that it wouldn't affect that.
Okay.
But yes, we don't have to spend it on the ARPA side for that.
Okay.
So, yeah. But even with that 500,000, we still have 576,000, which is what we have to work with
Okay.
after that.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where we are.
It was just, a request from me was just discussion on that, so.
But I think the fundamental thing we want to do is move it out of the line item that says ARPA
Yeah.
funds, right?
Yeah.
We want to do something with the money, even if it is to reallocate it across other funds or something. Well, I guess what we could do is, now that it's out there, it seems like I'm just pushing everything out to the future. We can come back to it in a month and see if there are ideas. People can brainstorm some ideas for how to spend. We know, did you say 700 and how much? Or from 500?
576,000.
Okay, so
161.
a little more than $500,000, which is a sizable chunk of money we could do something with. So maybe next month we can talk about whatever ideas people want to bring to the table. Okay? All right, the next item is donation to Ravenna City Schools.
Yeah, and I can walk through this real quick. And Mayor, we can even take this offline if you want. We talked about it briefly. I think Brian and the mayor before a meeting a couple months ago, probably now. But this was the early dismissal for West Main School. And this is a small cap item, so it's under 2,000. I think the total is about $1,800 just for one school. So I wanted to bring this back up because we never got a resolution to it, just to see if that's something for next year, a one-time donation that the city might do, so that I can just give them a firm yes or no on that. You know, and there could be a conversation if it's West Main plus the two other schools, and you're looking at, you know, 2,000 times 3, so $6,000 that you're looking at for a one-time, one-year donation that would allow them to fundraise from now until, you know, next year to pay for the following year, if that makes sense.
And what is
So
this?
the early dismissal is it's an electronic system that one individual inside West Main, as I understand it, would be on an iPad. So if a child walks up, they're waiting in line as the cars are moving through. Supposedly this is supposed to be a more fluid system for them to work through, but the parent pulls up in the car, they check the parent in on the iPad before sending the child out, then they can almost radio in, but using this system to tell them to come outside at that point. So it's just a way of communicating that the West Main principal, and his name is eluding me right now, has found out that has worked well for them, that they're looking to expand across the elementary schools there. So that's their request as it stood. And then it would check in the car riders, but then also allow them to check in the bus riders as well. Just making sure kids are getting on the bus, in the car, the right car, all that, so.
Is it the school dismissal manager? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I can send it around. There's a
And
specific
does
software that they use, but.
Would that be a cost share with the school district that we would be trying
So
to do?
they-
Or the school district's not providing it?
The school district is not providing it, as I understand. The and I'll stand corrected, I'll find out Thursday. Right now, the question is, yay or nay, would the city consider funding that for 1 year so that they can get up to speed? I'll find out Thursday, because I'm meeting with somebody there to discuss it. But for them, as I understand, West Main fundraises for this specifically because the other two elementary schools do not use it. So, and I'll stand corrected, Mayor, if they do. But
And I know, you know, we have they're at the preschool, which is, you know, a smaller level, much smaller. They have a similar programming, but this would be nice to utilize. I know you're saying just those 3 buildings, but just to let everybody, it works very smoothly. So a car pulls in, they see the number, they call for the kid to come out.
well, and I think I'm also cautious about this conversation because it's kind of out of our scope as the city on what we fund. You know, there is a school district and there's a reason for it. So I understand that too. So.
I guess my only comment would be, the school district has a $30 million budget. The system that you're talking about is one of many systems that can work that way of picking up. Driving through, there's a sensor on the car on some systems that send the name into the line. There's a whole lot of different ways of doing it. It's a great thing. I think it's good, et cetera. I just have a little bit of concern about there being a need there, and we're the ones that would provide for that need. If it's a real need, we should really have it. The school district should be funding it, I think.
And I'm
I
gonna
believe.
follow that up with, I think that the township would need to help fund that as well.
But it's a great system. I mean, and so I mean, if we want to do it,
Yep.
fine, but it may be outside of our scope. Do we go to the city, do we go to the school district and say, we've got this idea and we need to do this, and could you give us a couple $1,000s to do it? You know?
We do share a resource officer. That's a
Right.
collaborative effort.
Right.
And we share the cost.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Share the- yeah.
With the district, not the
I
town.
mean, you could argue, well, it's police
No
Exactly.
further comment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean,
good.
it's not a whole lot of money.
Well, I'll talk to the mayor offline. I think for now is just to bring it up before council, see what everybody's thoughts were, and I think most of us are on the same page, so.
I think it's a great program, but I think that it wouldn't hurt for the township to help, you know. put
Yeah,
into
so do
that.
some, I'll call it persuasive speaking, and
I would just leave it here.
Okay.
Request.
All right, no action there.
Yep.
That's the last item on our agenda. Mayor, is there a management update for the planning committee?
Not tonight.
All right. In that case, I will adjourn the planning committee.
And I will call to order the Community and Economic Development Committee at 6:56. Hopefully this is short and sweet, but I am going to pass this to the mayor because I am not aware at all what the easement request is for.
Well, there are two items that we've had requests for easements on. The one is critical, and that's the LG Chem project. They want to be up and running. Their target date is December, unless it's changed since we talked before. To find a way in, the only way in is through our property. And this is, Dennis is having heartthrobs of the bad kind, worrying about getting this done and holding them up. This is a copy of the easement. Now, I had communications with him and did see him today, but Bob, I have to rely on you with something like this. There is urgency involved and with this, and we may have to ask for a special meeting the next Monday, because I think Dennis is gonna, he can't be thinking we're gonna do that tonight. We can't, we didn't advertise it. But this is something that we need to do, and I'd like you to jump in and give your thoughts on this. I know this has raised concern for Bob because of the water tower. And we're squeezing both things in to the property, and it can be done, but go ahead, Bob.
Their original proposal was to run along our driveway toward the tank and then move over to the west along the hillside, which is currently owned by not the Boston Group, but where the Boston Group is, the old GE warehouse. The issue is it's currently in the process of being sold, and First Energy can't wait for the new owner to get permission to move over on their property. Ideally, that's what I wanted to see. So that's not an option right now, because this building could take quite some time, I guess, to transact, from what we're being told. The second, I asked them to go underground. They said it's not economically feasible. So they want to run down the west property line. I believe they said they were 40-foot poles. I forget exactly, 40-foot or 60-foot poles, and would just run due south to get to LG. I reviewed the easement, and I have some issues with it. I think it needs to be specific, that they're specifically serving the LG Chem property, which they don't specify. And at some point, if they're not serving LG, then they need to vacate. We know this is a big utility, and it's difficult to get them to do anything.
Was it the utility that said it was not cost feasible to go underground?
Correct,
Isn't everything else on LG's property underground?
correct.
All of the utilities there, and so this would be one that was sticking up
Right.
when everything else is going underground?
They wanted to go above ground down our right of way, and I would not let them.
Do they have us in a bind time-wise, and that's why they're able to say that it's not feasible for
Yes,
them?
we're in a bind time-wise, because we have promised that we would not interfere or hold up the project. Commitment was made before we even had them here. And it's generally, when you talk to Ray Harner, that's one of the strong parts of working with the city. We don't let stuff set, we take care of it. But I understand Bob's concerns, and I think that he and I probably need to get together, and he has the skill to evaluate this, being an engineer. But we have to come up with a way to do this. I suppose what I'm asking for tonight is support for the easement, but we will negotiate with them to try and straighten out some of Bob's concerns. But there's not a lot of give. There was not much space. It's the piece of the puzzle fits. You can move it a little bit. I did not hear whether they got any help from West
West
Rock
Rock.
with that 20-foot easement.
I haven't heard either. Originally, West Rock told them no. The other company, the warehouse, told them no. It wasn't feasible for them to run down Chestnut Street, from what we were told, and run down the north property line of Ray Harner's facility, which is the other suggestion. They would have been crossing his substation that they did not, LG originally said they didn't want. Ray leased it or sold it, and might have been the best option. There's been a lot of bad decisions, in my opinion. First Energy knew this project was coming. They were at the original meeting that we sold LG, the city, to, basically. And, you know, it's been very frustrating. I know they've had some major emergencies over the last couple of years. It's taken a lot of resources, but, yeah, I do feel like we're under the gun, or the gun's pointing at us.
And your concern
Oh,
is
just
that
the way
if we
it's
did,
written.
if we approve this, that it might be used not just for LG?
It's not I want it to distinguish, this is exactly why this has taken place. And if they're not serving this parcel, I don't want them to continue running it to serve all these other things. That's not what this is about. I mean, it's a simple
Well, it
markup.
doesn't sound like
It's a
that
simple
would be
markup.
something they would object to, I would hope.
I agree. It's kind of a blanket easement, but I'm not ready to sign it.
But that's, the tracking sheet has one for Old Forge Road, what's that?
That's a separate thing altogether.
Yeah, that's,
There's a gentleman out there, his last name is Parsons, and we have, it used to be a line that fed Muzzy Lake. I think it still indirectly feeds Sandy by
Through the Breakneck
Creek
somehow.
functioning there. This is serious farmland. It's very close to the church that's out on Old Forge Road. But it's a right-of-way that we own. It's not leased. We own it. And it goes right through the middle of his property and splits it up. He is trying to sell the farm, and that kills the deal every time because they don't have access across. Bob has told the gentleman what he needed. I talked to him the other night and asked what he was proposing. He was talking about 50-foot in 3 places, both ends, and then 50 in the middle, which would allow access, whether they're farmers that are buying it, to get to the other fields. I know there are other ways. He can go out in the road and come around, I suppose, and get it, but I I can't confirm I saw the exact spot. We went out, Tim and I went out to look for it, but It's very, very rural out there.
Why do so we own this so that we have access to Muzzy Lake? Is that why we own this land?
This was a feeder ditch to the Reed ditch, which is on the west side of Biomed, or Neomed, which actually was connected to the pipe that filled Muzzy Lake. Years, many, many years. Wood pipe, it's a wood pipe in a ditch. The wood pipe has collapsed, it looks like an open ditch now. So this man has multiple parcels of land that are landlocked, unless he can come in and cross that ditch.
But we need the ditch?
It's our property, City of Ravenna's property.
It's a feeder canal for the,
But we need, I mean, we couldn't sell it?
We could, the city council could agree to sell it.
I have to tell you, it's part of the JED with
Oh, right.
Richmond.
So what I've told this man is, and I'm pretty straightforward, that he's gonna make a lot of money selling this land. So he's gonna come to council asking for something for free. I said, I don't think you should ask for something for free. We will not sell him the land. I told him we will offer him an easement to cross. And there'll be specific language on that easement of how they can put a pipe in a ditch, or pipe the ditch and access that specific location only. Last thing we want is somebody to fill a ditch in because they have 140 acres worth of dirt and they're just gonna start plowing it in. It's not walkable for the most part, it's so overgrown. But the city hasn't sold land in a very, very long time, and as far as I'm concerned, we won't sell land. But city council's, city council has the right to.
Is that listed as Hudson Ditch on the map? Or what?
That name's familiar. I'd have to look at it and see. I mean, it's not too far off of 44. If you turn west off of 44 and you head down Old Forge, the first dip you come to, that's what we're referring to. We own on both sides of the road.
I've been out there, so I can still picture exactly what Bob is referring to, and the mayor.
So I told him he needed to hire a surveyor, a land surveyor that is a certified licensed land surveyor, and show us what he wants. And again, I reiterated that there's a lot of money involved in this, so don't come to city council saying you're poor.
A gift.
It is. So that's what that is. I haven't seen anything, and they've been ringing my phone for a few months now.
I think he has a client interested in some of the property there, but it's strange. You get involved with the JED and all of a sudden I'm becoming an expert on Roachtown with this, but
a couple months ago, maybe 6 months ago, city council agreed to exchange an easement with a landowner because we needed access to clean out the canal. They wanted access
Right, it was a give and
for a
take.
driveway.
Yeah.
So it worked out.
This
really
is just a give.
This is asking for a give. Right?
My thought is, on the Old Forge one in particular, once they present a land survey and have explicitly drawn up what they're wanting, then we can bring it back and consider it at that time and discuss pricing.
Pricing,
that.
even conditions, use, what's allowed to cross, is it agriculture, is it subdivision, sort of thing.
and again, I'm not beating the drums for this either way on that. If it can be done, and I can't speak to the value of providing this, but we can check into it. But I'm going to let Bob call him and let him know that we presented this to council tonight and what he has to do. He was going to have that done when he talked to me, but I'm not sure we were talking about the type of surveyor you're talking about. but he wanted 50 feet on either end. I said, well, I put it together and survey it, but if council thinks it needs to be smaller and still functional, we can deal with that after the fact. With this, this isn't something that I have to say, we got to get this done tomorrow. But the other one, we have to get it done tomorrow, because we're going to have to vote on this at next week, special for that, and we'll have to work it out, one way or the other. It's got to get in there.
I think moving LG Chem forward, at least for me, I'm in favor of moving it forward. Anyone else? Tim?
It's fine.
Okay. And obviously, I think we would support you, Bob, in that whatever you think is the best route to go for the city on that, and without holding anything up. And then, Chelsea, do we need to separate these out, so it's two separate?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there any management updates?
Do you have any management updates for this committee, this
No,
committee?
no.
Okay, so nothing on this one?
Nothing? Okay. So with that, we'll adjourn Community and Economic Development at 7:11.
And at 7:11, we'll call to order the Personnel Committee meeting. Tonight, we have one item down on our agenda. That's the IT manager position. Last month, we began a discussion and talk about that position. There seemed to be a great deal of support for it. This month, we wanted to look at some additional numbers on the position and decide whether to move forward or not on it. As you recall, we had an IT manager position back in 2017 was the last time that we had it. When that position was here, it was in the pay range 21, The equivalent amount of money in 2023 for that position at range 21 is about $83,500. So that's what the position would be costing us salary-wise. When you add in the fringes, PERS, workers' comp, insurance, et cetera, it will get the position to about $125,000, all of those things added in. We do have an IT contract with Quality IP, and that contract is about $11,000 a month, $132,000 a year. A great deal of that contract will be eliminated with the IT manager coming on, but not all of it. So we can't say that it's a dollar-for-dollar switch on that. This is just information for you to process and think about as we're talking about the position. I don't mean to drone on. As we look at it, the Quality IP contract extends through next July 2024. And so I'm not sure if we want to bring this, if we decide to bring this position back, if we want to do it right now and overlap the two contracts for a few months. That may be an expensive proposition. But given those numbers, what is the thinking of our committee on should we move forward with this? Christina?
I'm thinking that if we can bring someone on now, they can help with the process as far as exploring whether we're using Quality IP or another company and coming up with what their contract's going to look like, because our expertise is not what an IT manager or an IT position is, so they can kind of help work out. Also, just because maybe the first year, or for the first couple months, we have that overlap, but that's also gonna help as far as making sure it's a smooth transition instead of those big bumps. So I'm in support of moving this forward now.
Matt,
I'm as
your
well.
thoughts?
I agree. Excuse me. I believe there probably should be some overlap as well, just so it is a smooth transition. And we can work out the areas where maybe this individual may not be quite as strong in, and we may need to keep quality IP on for a period of time to help with some of those areas. But yeah, I am in favor of moving this forward.
Other input from other council members? Any thoughts?
I have a
Just-
question.
Oh, go
Okay,
ahead.
both,
Cheryl can go
Okay.
first.
The only questions, concerns, thoughts, I don't even know if concerns are an issue, but, previously with one person running the IT for many years, and the consistent way that that person did things, when that person left the position, there were open-ended issues that nobody else had any way of taking care, jumping in and taking care of. There wasn't any cross-training or oversight with that IT position, and that's typical of any single position. And that's something that I want to make sure that if we did fill the position, how would we make sure that we were protected, that all of the information, was shared somewhere with someone? Who would be that second backup person if the IT person is sick or
Quality
leaves?
IP would be the backup person, or that whoever is in the position of quality IP would be the backup person. I've seen in
So our
many-
eventual thing is to have both, the position and the contract,
Correct.
not eliminate the
And just
contract eventually.
eliminate-
Oh, I think we want to eliminate a great portion of the contract, a great portion of the quality IP contract. But there may be some things that need to be left that our IT manager may not be able to do, and times that we need to have somebody whenever our IT manager is not available. Regarding when somebody was here before and did things in a unique way, that would not be the industry standard on how we should operate that position.
Correct.
So we got ourselves in a little bit of a jam right there by having a person that was doing things in that way. Our hope and expectation would be with a new person that they would not operate in that way, would be my hope and expectation.
Well, and I think
Christine?
in other cities and municipalities, I know that for us, with the county even, there's that checks and balances. So you have your organization that's like a quality IP plus that person, they're working together, covering for each other when someone is sick, or taking over those bigger jobs that one person can't handle. I mean, let's be honest, when we move to a new building, one person is not gonna be able to move all our technology. We're gonna need support from something a little bit bigger. But if someone needs assistance with onboarding when they start a job and they need help setting up their email, their computer, their phone, that would be great to have a human being to come in and do that.
Yes.
And have that approach as well. So, I think, I'm not sure we 100% know what that balance is going to be until we really start looking to see what that person's capable of doing. Plus, that doesn't mean that can't change. So maybe the first year, whoever the quality IP is, that IT organization is doing a little more. And as we get comfortable with that IT person, we relook at those contracts and make some adjustments. I think that's always subject to change based on education and expertise, so.
Paul, you had a comment, Paul?
Yes, I did. My concern is simple: increased efficiency through the whole process, not just the transition, but down the road as well.
Okay, thank you for your input. Committee, it looks like we want to proceed with the reestablishment of this position. It would be an amendment to the payroll ordinance to establish this position, and we would look at establishing it at range 21, similar to what it was before. the job description, Heather has it and is ready to implement that. And I think we would move it forward. Mayor, your thoughts on that? You're okay?
I'm good with that. We'll pick the spot where the overlap is going to be.
Okay. Mhm.
We're definitely going to try to avoid it being half a year where we're paying that, but as long as we have it in the place that it needs to be and it's been passed by council, then we can pick the spot where we'll go ahead and we'll work together on that.
Okay. Okay, good. So we will move that forward. Management update?
No more.
No more? Personnel Committee adjourns at 7:20.